Verstappen won on the track, but was erased from the official results. A difference of almost a minute turned into automatic disqualification. Before we go on, I want to hear your thoughts. Unforgivable error by the team, or an overly rigid rule? Because the key question is this: how can a team of this caliber make such a basic mistake in a category where everything is measured down to the millimeter? In the 2026 NLS 2 race at the Nürburgring, the Verstappen racing Mercedes-AMG GT3 dominated the race with absolute authority. But hours later, that victory vanished. The reason? A direct breach of the tire regulations that leaves no room for interpretation. Let's break down what really happened and why this is much more serious than it seems. Stay until the end, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. The scene is the Nürburgring, NLS 2 of 2026, one of the most demanding environments in modern motorsport, where operational precision is just as important as pure speed. Verstappen Racing arrives with a Mercedes-AMG GT3 Evo backed by a top-level structure, with a clear objective that goes beyond a simple one-off victory: to accumulate mileage, validate processes, and fine-tune every detail for the 24 hours of Nürburgring. From the start, car number 3 displays something that the most experienced observers quickly detect: stability in long stints, consistency in traffic, and an execution that doesn't seem improvised, but rather meticulously planned. The start of the race provides a key first clue. It's not about explosive dominance, but progressive control, managing the pace without overexposing the car in the early stages. On a circuit like the Nordschleife, with constant traffic and changing conditions, that's no accident. It's a sign of operational maturity. Verstappen and his teammates don't force unnecessary situations. They prioritize positioning, race readiness, and efficiency in each stint, something that aligns more with a classic endurance mentality than an aggressive sprint approach. As the hours pass, the Mercedes begins to build an advantage that doesn't stem from a single factor, but rather from the sum of small successes. Clean pit stops, consistent pace, no visible errors, and tire degradation seemingly well managed within the track's limitations. The data that truly matters isn't the final gap, but how it's built, without spikes, without chaos, without critical moments. To a seasoned spectator, this points to a solid technical package and a team that, apparently, has the key variables of the race under control. This is where the story changes completely, not through interpretation, but due to pure regulation. In the NLS, tire usage is not a flexible or strategic variable in the modern sense we see in Formula One, but a strictly limited element to guarantee competitive equality and cost control. Each car has a maximum of 6 sets of tires for the entire Saturday, which equates to 24 tires in total, and this limit includes absolutely everything, from long stints to possible adjustments based on track conditions. The critical point is that this control does not depend on team statements or internal estimates. Each tire is identified by a barcode system that allows the stewards to record in real time which tire is fitted, on which car, and at what time. This makes the rule completely binary. There is no room for interpretation, no acceptable margin of error, and above all, no space to justify an excess as a minimal or irrelevant advantage. If the system detects a 7th set, the infringement is automatic and verifiable without question. And this is where the fact that changes everything comes in. The number 3 Mercedes used 7 sets of tires during race day, meaning 20 tires instead of the permitted 24. This excess is not insignificant in regulatory terms, although it might not be perceived as a decisive advantage on the track. From a regulatory perspective, it disrupts the fundamental balance of the championship, as it allows for more fresh rubber than the rest of the field, something the regulations specifically aim to prevent so that teams with greater financial backing cannot impose their superiority simply through appeals. The consequence, therefore, is not a controversial decision by the stewards, but the direct application of a rule designed to avoid any subsequent debate. It was acknowledged that there was no intention to gain an advantage, but rather an internal management error, which shifts the focus from ethics to something more concerning at this level: operational control. In endurance racing, especially at the Nürburgring, every procedure is designed to prevent precisely this type of failure, and when it occurs, the interpretation is not sporting, but organizational. The driver didn't fail, the car didn't fail, the system failed. Tire management in this type of race is not a secondary task. It is a critical process that involves coordination between engineers, mechanics, and strategy managers. Each set must be identified, recorded, and validated before being mounted, and any changes to the initial plan must undergo multiple internal checks. What the facts suggest is that at some point in that chain there was a breakdown, whether due to accounting error, poor communication, or a decision made under pressure without proper validation, something that can happen in an environment like the Nordschleife, but which should not escalate to a regulatory infraction. Furthermore, there is a factor that the most experienced professionals understand well. The Nürburgring is not a conventional circuit. Its length, constant traffic, and unpredictable tire degradation force dynamic decisions to be made during the race. This increases the workload on the team and multiplies the likelihood of errors if the processes aren't robust. An unforeseen change, a strategy adjustment, or even a simple miscommunication can lead to fitting an extra set of tires without the internal system detecting it in time, and by then, the error is irreversible. The first consequence is the most obvious, but not necessarily the simplest. The victory vanishes. It's not nuanced, not adjusted, not penalized with a time penalty. It's simply erased. The official result no longer reflects what happened on the track and is instead based solely on compliance with the regulations. The second consequence is competitive, but also narrative. Row racing inherits the victory, and although their performance was solid throughout the race, the story is inevitably altered. It's not about a victory earned through superiority, but one inherited through a penalty. This type of scenario changes the perception of the championship because it introduces a key element in endurance racing. It's not enough to be fast. You have to be flawless in every procedure, and that completely redefines how the actual performance of each team is interpreted. The most profound impact, however, is reputational. When a program associated with a name like Verstappen makes a mistake like this, the conversation shifts from focusing on performance to questioning the entire structure. The criticism isn't directed at the driver, but at the team's internal control and, by extension, at the standard of execution expected of a factory-backed project. In an environment where every detail counts, this type of failure exposes a weakness that isn't measured in lap times, but in operational confidence. This episode serves as an early warning, but also as a precedent. Because in endurance racing, especially in 24-hour events, mistakes are not only amplified, they cost the entire result. This is where an experienced perspective separates media hype from real analysis. Verstappen and his team aren't measuring this program in terms of NLS victories, but rather in preparation for the Nürburgring 24 hours. And if we isolate the official result and focus on the data, the overall assessment remains solid. Competitive pace, consistency in long stints, and rapid adaptation to an extremely complex environment. From that perspective, the main objective of the weekend has been achieved, even if the result doesn't reflect it. However, this episode introduces a variable that cannot be ignored. The performance is validated, but the operational execution is called into question. In endurance racing, especially a 24-hour race, it's not the fastest car that wins, but the most precise package for the longest possible time. And that includes internal processes, resource management, and regulatory discipline. What happened here necessitates reinforcing that structure because any crack, however small it may seem, becomes critical when the race extends over an entire day. There's also an interesting takeaway from Verstappen's own perspective. His reaction has been cool, almost clinical, focused on learning rather than dwelling on the lost result. This aligns with the approach of a driver who fully understands where the real objective lies. He's not looking to validate his performance in a single race, but rather to arrive at the main event with as much knowledge as possible. But that same mentality demands that the team be aligned with the same level of rigor, because otherwise, the work done on the track loses its value the moment the regulations come into play. This is truly endurance at the highest level. You can dominate on the track, build a solid lead, and execute flawless runs for hours, but if you fail at a basic element of the regulations, it all vanishes. Verstappen Racing's victory wasn't lost due to a lack of pace. It was lost because of a detail that, in this championship, doesn't allow for second chances. The main question is now completely answered. This isn't a murky controversy or a debatable decision by the stewards. It's a clear, measurable, and verifiable case. The permitted tire limit was exceeded, and the penalty was predetermined. And that's precisely why the impact is greater, because there's no alternative narrative to soften what happened, just a mistake that transforms dominance into a non-existent result. But if we look beyond the surface, the message is even more powerful. The performance is there, the car has proven to be a true benchmark at the Nürburgring, and the driver's skill is not in question. This completely changes the perspective for the immediate future, because it makes this episode more of a warning than a defeat. A warning that comes at the right time, when there's still room for correction before reaching the real goal. Now I ask you, will we see a team that has learned and refined every process to the limit, or a project that continues to suffer from structural flaws under extreme pressure? That's the question that makes this disqualification much more significant than a simple lost victory. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel.